As you probably know, I'm a pretty big fan of chaos damage over time. Not poison. I do like poison builds, but chaos damage over time, meaning Essence Drain, Contagion, Bane, Blight, and Soul Rend. I think that those are all the skills. And you may know from my Bane build and maintaining all that, that it is a comfortable archetype, or if you played, ED Contagion Trickster back in the day, it's just been really fun and satisfying. You get access to things like Profane Bloom, you get really nice proliferation, you don't have to worry about Reflect, you can ignore Energy Shield from monsters. It's always been a really cool damage archetype that's very unique. And as you may know from my League Start video about Bane last league, the final nerf that they made last league, and then this league they nerfed it even more, all indirectly. It's mostly indirect nerfs. The archetype as a whole was on life support. It was still playable if you were a little clever about the tech. After all these nerfs, I just have not been recommending it because it's just hard to get to a comfortable amount of damage. With that said, I do very often get people coming in chat saying, hey, I want to League Start Bane, how's that going? Or is there anything I can do with ED Contagion? I've just kind of been parodying what, most people say these days. It's a lower damage archetype that's just not in a very good place. And I went to the drawing board with the main person, Nictator, that I work with on builds. He's a real, giga brain, 500 IQ guy with some really, really cool tech. He always comes to me with, really cool ideas, and we work together to refine it and make builds out of it. And I started talking with him about 2 weeks ago. Can we do something to make Chaos DoT viable and feel good? What I have here today is what I have. It is not incredible. It's not awesome. There's some janky stuff that you have to do to make the damage, good or solid. And then if you want to have just good quality of life, you sacrifice a lot of damage for that. But I have some really cool tech here that I think you'll enjoy. So even if you are not playing this build, and even if you're not remotely interested in chaos damage over time at all, there's some really cool tech here that might apply to your build, or at the very least, it might apply to something that you play in the future. And that's really the main focus of this video. I'm going to start off with, this is not a build guide or anything. I'm just going to start off with showing you some gameplay and a couple of the variations, talking about what's going on here. And then we'll get a little bit deeper into the tech. Basically, the idea of what we're doing here is combining multiple Chaos DoT skills. And this has always been the foundation of chaos damage over time in general. Like ED Contagion, you kind of just did ED Contagion, but even then, sometimes you would add in things like Vol Blight. One of the cool, unique things about chaos damage over time is the fact that each chaos damage over time skill stacks uniquely. That means we can layer Bane, Soul Rend, Blight, Essence Drain, Contagion even if we wanted to, but it's very low damage. We can layer all of those on top of each other and they all do their own independent damage. Any modern chaos damage over time build is going to do things like that. What I have here is a combination, you can pick 2 out of 3, of Soul Rend, Essence Drain, and Blight. What I'm doing is I crafted these really nice gloves with Soul Rend. This gives me +3 to my level of my Soul Rend right here, which is really, really nice. Gives me some AoE as well. And because it has the Essence of Delirium mod right there on that suffix, it also counts as a 5-link. So my Soul Rend here is level 30. I also have a Replica Dragonflight right here, give me +3, +1 on my wand. So my Soul Rend, my 21 goes up to 30 by being slotted in these gloves, and that's without Empower or anything like that. And if you've ever played chaos damage over time, the primary way that you scale it, the base damage over time that you're scaling, that all comes from gem levels. And then what we're doing is currently this is, for clearing, we'll put in something like GMP. Cool thing about GMP is we don't care about proj damage, so it's not a less damage multiplier, but it's also not a more damage multiplier. And then I have the Helmet Chant for +1 proj. And this gives us a lot of little kitty cats that we shoot out. Of course, you need the Soul Rend Cat MTX. And yeah, the clear is actually really good. We're actually not using Profane Bloom. Currently using a Despair on hit ring right here. And we're not using Profane Bloom. We can Shield Charge and Frost Blink around. We're running Haste. We're running a Lightning Coil. I got this Corrupted Lightning Coil really, really cheap. I think it was like 10 or 15 chaos. It was really, really, really cheap. And the playstyle like this is pretty fine. And but if we fight a rare right here, you can see, well, that's actually decent damage, but it's not exceptional damage. There is, not very good single target damage here. So we actually want to layer in our Essence Drain on top of that, and then we get significantly more damage. And in this configuration, I think I'm at like 2.6, 2.9 million DPS, depending on what I have configured, with both skills layered on top of each other, as well as Withering Step at max stacks. So, that alone, this is with the Despair on hit ring right here, which Essence Drain and Soul Rend do hit. So we get the Despair on hit, and then I'll show you how bad the single target damage is like this. So we'll Withering Step in, We'll do this. We'll layer both of our skills, and you can see really bad single target, right? Really, really bad. So then we can put in our void manipulation. Then I have this really good faded end ring, and I'll go into the tech of how it works in a second. And then make sure everything here is good. Then I'll actually put in Blight instead of Essence Drain. Blight's actually the single highest chaos damage over time skill. Then we want to manually curse, get our stacks up, get a Soul Rend, channel Blight, and yeah, you're not going to be able to see how much damage that gets to, but this configuration gets to about 7 million DPS. And the way that that works is we're using the Faded End Ring. This is a very, very cool ring. This one was corrupted with level 23 Despair, which saves us a gem socket, which is great. So we get a lot of our damage by stacking Curse Effect over time. The way that it works is you cast your Curse, it will gain 10% increased effect per second. So after 5 seconds, the Curse gets 100% increased effect. And then when the Curse hits 200% effect, which is 10 seconds later, then it will expire and you have to recast the Curse. So that's a bit of clunk right there. But the cool thing is you get tons of Curse effect for both our Despair and Temp Chains. So they become very, very strong. And, you know, you get back some of that lost power from Temp Chains. We can very easily sustain a lot of Blight stacks. We can keep our max Blight stacks up all the time as long as we are being pretty cognizant about, you know, keeping the upkeep of our curses and reapplying them at the right time. Without doing anything really crazy here, this configuration gets to about 7 million DPS. I didn't spend a ton of currency. I'm still only level 89, and we can hit decent damage. It's not the craziest stuff in the world, but, you know, if you really like the archetype and you want to play it, you can do that. Other cool thing is you actually don't need to use the Essence Train. The Essence Train is just, if you don't feel like channeling Blight, and you don't really even need to take out the GMP if you want to. 2 Soul Runs like this can clear okay. It's not bad, and the nice thing about keeping Blight in is we can use Vol Blight. And Vol Blight is a great full screen clearing skill. Even better. And yeah, okay, we might be able to get some decent single target damage showing off right here. Unfortunately, because we have so much increased skill effect duration, the Vol skill lockout time actually goes longer as well. That's a very annoying consequence in the way that Vol skills work. You don't have your Vol skills up as much as you would like because of that. It's really annoying, actually, because we're scaling skill effect duration. But it does mean that the Vol Blight lasts very long, which allows us, yeah, debuff lasts 11.7 seconds. And, you know, obviously even longer if we have Temp Chains on them. But, yeah, we can look at a little bit better single target here. See if we can try to see the Blight monsters in the middle. Okay, the Essence monsters died pretty quickly there. So this configuration's okay. You know, it's 7 million DPS. It's nothing crazy. The clear is a little clunky like this. Again, I would prefer putting in GMP here. And the clear gets really, really solid. You know, not really good single target damage, but the clear is pretty respectable right here. So, you know, if you really like the archetype and all that, it's pretty good. You know, decent damage like that. It can clear rares. It's never going to pop off and do really, really hard content, but it's fast. It is relatively defensive. We're using a lightning coil. With better gear, we can hit 5k life or so. I have pieces of gear that don't even have life on them. You know, it's pretty mediocre items, honestly, in this build. Anyway, I just want to show that the build is viable, and I'll share a sanitized POB with you in the description below if you want to just play around with the archetype and the ideas. But what I want to talk about today is actually more of the tech that goes into the build. So the first thing that I would tell you to look at is this tattoo everything video. It goes into a little bit of the detail about what I'm doing here, and that is using a Elegant Hubris that is commemorating Caspero that gives us Supreme Ostentation, ignore attribute requirements. It allows us to equip whatever we want without any attributes. The bonus there, and you'll see that I've changed my pathing a couple times, so I have to get more tattoos. So I'm not really configured finally right now. I'm missing a lot of tattoos, but because of Supreme Ostentation, we don't care about attributes, and attributes do nothing. So we can tattoo every single node. So for example, I can get another roughly 40% damage recoup. I can get 40% increased maximum life. I can max out my spell suppression very easily without worrying about dexterity requirements. And then the big thing that we really care about here is skill effect duration. See that I had a lot more before. To finish this build, I would max that out because that means that our chaos damage of time, we don't have to reapply it, and then our blight stacks last even longer, and then we just can maintain our max blight, you know, much more sufficiently. That's the first part of the tech. The second part of the tech is, you know, I go over the detail in the video. This Elegant Hubris specifically, if you use the Timeless Jewel search website, you can find the most efficient for your build nodes. And so what we have here, and actually I'll show you the complete tech, this and this. So with these two guys combined, so unfortunately, these items like kind of suck for the build. They're just not very good. Like Spore Guard's okay if you're standing still. The Explodey is like not very good. And the Breath Stealer gloves, you get Blighted Spores, which are like an AoE headhunter effect, which is kind of cool, but there's no life on them. We don't get any Eldritch Implicits. So at the end of the day, I ended up not using it. But for getting started on the build, each one of these Blight uniques, you can anoint. That's the special thing about Blight uniques. And you'll notice, you know, these anoints look kind of bad. Why am I anointing these? Well, in the case of this Elegant Hubris, these anoints actually each give me 80% increased damage. Because on my amulet, I have Spiritual Aid anointed. The minion damage right here, I get 80%, 80%, 80%, 80%. So I get 5 times 80, 400% increased damage for my build just from these nodes, and then getting the anoints right here. I'm using an Impossible Escape on Eldritch Battery right here, which allows me to take these remaining ones without having to travel to the nodes. And then we get another 240% right here. This is some really, really cool tech that just gives us a lot of base spell damage for the build. And cast damage over time is unique as a DoT skill that scales based on spell damage. It's on all of the gems, which allows us to focus much more heavily on damage over time multiplier as our scaler. And it allows us to be more efficient with scaling our damage. Unfortunately, the downsides of using these uniques, to me, really wasn't worth the upside. Really wasn't worth it compared to this type of really good gloves. Withered expires slower, cast damage over time multiplier, and then, you know, really strong gloves that can really boost our secondary skill. Unfortunately, we had to give up one of them, and then, unfortunately, Spore Guard just doesn't give us really good defenses, and something like Lightning Coil, everyone's using it these days. It's a really good band-aid for dealing with physical damage, particularly as a witch. This is really, really cool tech that I couldn't fit in the build to keep it still really comfortable, unfortunately. Like, this is 160% increased spell damage, which is really cool, but I wasn't able to keep it in the build, so this is just something that dropped out. We were playing around with Dissolution of the Flesh, and then multiple Replicate Dragonflights. This is kind of the other thing that allows the build to even exist, because we can buy these really, really cheap. Yeah, a Replica Dragon Fangs for all Blight Gems is 50 chaos right now, and then if we do level of all Soul Rend Gems, this is currently, I guess there's a couple of 80 chaos. I don't know who is paying 80 to 100 chaos, but it's still not crazy. You can get a Soul Rend one for relatively cheap, and then that way you are, you know, you're kind of sitting pretty. Yeah, usually scaling gem levels is a pain in the butt, and then I was originally using a staff right here. I was using a Cane of Kulamak. These are both really, I think they're identical. One of them's rolled a little bit better, this one. But yeah, socketed support gems, increased spell damage, and chaos dot multi. If I'm not holding alt, you can see 185% spell damage, level of gems, 85 dot multi. Like, really, really, really good staff, but then you're using a staff. And unfortunately, you know, you lose the really good block. You lose the potential to craft spell suppression on your shield. Just having a shield here, I get +1 level, 94% spell damage, and then this wand. This is a very mid wand. I just threw it into Reforged Chaos until I hit T1 Chaos dot multi, and then I crafted increased chaos damage. We can get something much better here if I put a little bit more effort into it. The quality of life that we get from shield charge, the, you know, insane mobility that we get access to, I think is, for me, it's pretty mandatory to enjoy the game. And then the other problem with the Cane of Kulamak is it only works really, like, you know, the cast dot multi and the increased spell damage are global, but the socketed gems, where a lot of this damage comes from, it'll give +3 to the level of Empower. That's like the big thing. So I can take my low level Empower here, you know, just have a level 3 corrupted Empower, put it in here, and now it goes to level 6, which gives me +5 to the level of my supported skill gem. And then if I had a level 4 Empower, it would be even one more. This is very, very powerful. Like, for the best single target damage, the Cane of Kulamak is better here. But unfortunately, like, you know, for a good quality life build that you want to play, this way we can use Tempest Shield as well, get Spell Block, get Shock Immunity, etc. Other funny thing that we did here is I am not using Profane Bloom. As you saw, the clear with Soul Rend is pretty decent. Like, with GMP in here, I can clear maps pretty consistently. A little bit of proj speed would be nice. But yeah, we can clear really quickly and cleanly. These cats will fly through the enemies and kill them really cleanly without any explodey, to the point where we took Frigid Wake, which will chill nearby enemies, make them deal 10% reduced damage. We become freeze and chill immune. You can make an argument for Profane Bloom, but it was actually not really noticeable while I was mapping. It just, you know, sounded and looked cool if you're addicted to Profane Bloom. I don't think there's anything else to really show here. This is all very mediocre gear that you can put together pretty quickly. You know, I don't have a Watcher's Eye. I'm only level 89. I am actually thinking of respecking this character into something else. I don't know what else right now, but I kind of want to see if we can leverage this tech in a different way and do something. I don't know, on hit soul rend or something like that. Cast on crit, on hit soul rend. There we go. Cats on crit. We'll bring that back. Again, this is just a rough little prototype. This is not a finalized build. Yeah, 6.8 million DPS is this is like the blight in soul rend configuration. It's decent. If you really love the archetype, if you love the MTX, you love the feel of it, it is still viable and playable. If you can get your hands on a elegant hubris like this, definitely check out that previous video I just talked about that goes into detail about how to search for it. It's really just going to be like a comfy mapper, and that's about it. And speaking of that's about it, that is about it for me today. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all soon. Bye.